Senior Charles Minor.
And I'm Alice Vale. Welcome to this edition of Reel to Reel.
We hear a lot today about becoming a whole person, achieving your potential, living life to the fullest. These are great ideas, and we should all try to achieve them in the best we can. But the definitions sometimes confound us. For instance, someone in a process of self-fulfillment might turn out to be selfish in the eyes of others. We have a story tonight about a family that faces great odds in its attempt to reach potential. The DePrince family of Voorhees, New Jersey includes 5 children who were born with multiple disabilities. However, in most ways, the children lead normal lives thanks to the selfless love and concern of their parents and each other. We think that you'll find this story very inspiring.
But first, we'll take a look at television from the perspective of children, or rather, from the viewpoint of parents who'd like to see some changes made in the medium. We'll travel to Massachusetts and visit with some of the members of a consumers group known as Action for Children's Television, who work tirelessly to improve what your children see on television.
At this very moment, millions of children just like these are doing just what you see here. Totally absorbed, in rapt attention, they are watching television. On an average, 28 to 32 hours a week.
You talk or your face is going to look like raw meat.
Up until 12 years ago, not too many people were bothering to question what their children were watching during those long hours in front of the TV. Then one day, one person decided that she and her children had had enough, and Action for Children's Television was born. Her name is Peggy Charon, and no one is more surprised than she is that 12 years later, the organization has a national membership of 15,000, has offices in Newtonville, Massachusetts, a staff of 12, publishes books in a biannual magazine, and has actually done something to bring about some much-needed change in the business and the responsibility, as she sees it, of children's television. It all started in her living room.
In part, that's because I think we were saying the right thing at the right time, so that a lot of people out there were listening. And the broadcasters even started to listen a little bit, because what they were doing was so disturbing that I think it even hit them that maybe they'd have to start to change.
What the broadcasters were doing was treating children between the ages of 2 and 11 like just another market, to be sold. At the same time, they were not providing them with a wide variety of good programming. In this film, produced by ACT, called Children for Sale, the point is well made.
Children don't just look at TV for entertainment. They look to it for answers. Answers to some of the most pressing questions in a young life. How can I be special?
Green Machine, a racer for guys who like a ride that's really fast.
How can I be strong?
Cookie Crisp cereal is part of a complete breakfast, you know.
How should I act so people will like me?
They talked to us about the child market, the 2 to 11-year-old market. That's a funny way to hear your children talked about when you first come into this business. They were selling children pills that said on the back of the bottle, "Keep out of the reach of children." Highly sugared foods that the American Academy of Pediatrics and dentists said to us were the last kinds of things we should be pushing to children. We might let them have them once in a while, but we shouldn't be telling them to keep eating them. And toys that the industry magazines let us know were, in large part, the most expensive and the worst designed toys in the marketplace.
So Peggy and the ACT staff began talking to anyone who would listen. Their seriousness and dedication has brought them notice from the public and from the Federal Communications Commission, as well as from the broadcasters. One of the things they are proudest of, though, is not any one award, but the fact that, due to their efforts, commercial advertising aimed at children has been reduced by 40%. ACT began in a living room and now fills a house. It has a board of directors, a national membership, and a corporate structure. On the top floor is the legal department. Margaret Metzger is a lawyer who gave up a private practice to work at ACT. Nancy Dietz, her assistant, is the mother of 2 young children, and both of these women know exactly what the issues are.
I think you can say fairly that before ACT began, was probably saw some of the worst advertising practices directed at children just about the time that ACT was formed in response to those very practices. And what you saw were programs that were really nothing more than commercials.
Our whole argument is that children's television is a shared responsibility, and that broadcasters are responsible, but parents are very responsible too for what their children watch. And we spend a lot of time talking to parents about how they can help their children choose appropriate television programs, how parents can spend time watching programs with their children, turn off the set when the program is over.
Downstairs, there's a library that holds a treasure of information that librarian Paula Rolick does her best to keep straight.
We have books and we have magazines. We have research reports which contain unpublished theses, conference proceedings. The very special thing about Acting for Children's Television is these files, because they contain newspaper clippings, pamphlets, magazine articles going back a dozen years.
It's a researcher's dream. Robert Kroc is Director of Development and keeps track of ACT's thousands of members. Since ACT survives primarily on small donations, every member counts. Meg Schwartz sees to all publications of books and ACT's magazine, REACT. She, of course, like everyone else, gets lots of help and suggestions from Peggy. In many ways, it's just a typical office. But it's the people who work here who make it more than that, something special.
I don't think ACT is a job for any of us. It involves much of our lives, and it's hard to treat it as just another job. It requires a lot of intense involvement, and no, it's not just a job at all.
It's more than just a job because the issues are so important. What are our children watching on TV? Is it good for them? How are they being affected? Are they learning good things? Are they getting a picture of the real world?
Kind of gun, like machine guns, and a tranquilizer, and then a bomb.
That good?
Yeah, it exploded the whole ground, and it was... Bigfoot never gives up.
I act like the ball is a heavy weight, and I pick it up and I throw it at my brother.
Natalie Rothstein, ACT staff writer.
Television has always been perceived as, you know, an innocuous kind of entertainment, but it really is a major cultural influence on their children's lives, and the figures themselves are astonishing. You know, children, by the time they're 18, will spend 15,000 hours before a television set. Now, that's more time than they spend in school. And once you realize that, you probably want to exert the same kind of responsibility and, you know, judgment over a child's television viewing experiences that you do in other areas of a child's life.
Kim Hayes, Executive Director.
By giving children a diversity of programming to look at, and by giving them a diversity of educational and informational programming to look at, you're influencing the way they look at the world in a positive way. And it's one of the best ways to make change that I can think of.
Change is what ACT wants. To do away with fraudulent and misleading advertising aimed at children, and to improve and diversify the programming now offered to them. It does not want to become a censor or curb the right to freedom of speech on the airwaves. It does want to make sure, however, that the rights of children to a true picture of the world they live in are preserved in the process.
You have to work for the very big changes, and then you have to be pleased when you get small changes, but you can't stop there, because you have to work for big changes, because that's the way you make change, is to keep working, and you have to keep pushing.
That's what ACT does best, but it can't do it alone. It takes parents and broadcasters working together to take the responsibility for the young minds in their care and under their influence. Only then will TV realize its potential for educating a world that is so in need of understanding.
If you're watching me right now, you've made a conscious viewing choice. It's nice to know that there's an organization like Action for Children's Television concerned with providing quality programming for young viewers who can't decide what good television really is.
Some say love, it is a river that drowns the tender reed. Some say love, it is a razor that leaves your soul to bleed. Some say love, it is a hunger, an endless aching need. I say love, it is a flower, and you, it's only seed. When the night has been too lonely and the road has been too long, and you think that love is only for the lucky and the strong, just remember in the winter, far beneath the bitter snows, lies the seed that with the sun's love in the spring becomes the rose.
Jesus spoke to them again. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will have the light of life and will never walk in darkness.
Very good, Amy. Good job.
Kathy, receive the light of Christ.
Amy, receive the light of Christ. Daddy, receive the light of Christ.
Thank you. Mercedes, the light of Christ.
Amen.
Hi, I'm Joe Iannone, and with Mercedes and our family, we gather each morning, usually before work and school, for a few minutes to sometimes light a candle, remember that God's presence is going to be with us throughout the day, to remember that the rest that we have is to be shared with other people, and to go forth in our own sense of mission and service throughout our own activities today.
Ritual prayer is really the best way for our family to pray because we need to touch and to be touched. We need to act out the feelings that are inside of us. And because our children are at the age where they think concretely, the external kinds of ways that we deal with life are very important for them. It's also important for us to share mutually in this prayer. So this is a good way for us to get our day together and to begin in a positive way.
Kathy, God bless you and keep you all the days of your life.
Daddy, God bless you and keep you all the days of your life.
Oh, thank you, honey. Usually we gather in the evening again for just a few seconds to kind of ask ourselves how well is God present in our life, to bless each other, and to kind of gather strength for the night and for the new day.
This is the rhythm of prayer in the Iannone family. Family prayer is really important to us because it helps us to be connected to each other and to be connected with God.
When Spanish explorer Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo discovered the coast of California in 1542, he found a land of wild and immense beauty. To the Roman Catholic missionaries who came with him, It was a land of immense possibility, and the now famous California mission system is the result of their ambition to spread the word of God among the Indians. Perhaps the most widely publicized of the missions is this one at San Juan Capistrano, just over an hour south of Los Angeles. Founded in 1776 by Father Junipero Serra, it is the seventh of these missions to be established in California. Its beautiful gardens and long cloistered walkways still offer a cool island of tranquility to weary travelers, as they did years ago. Today, thousands of tourists flock to the mission to get a feel for the history of California. The ruins of the old church, still strong and impressive, and the attention to historic preservation at the mission create a mood here that seems suspended in time. But as Father Paul Martin, pastor of the mission, will tell you, there's more here than just a tourist attraction.
This is an architect's drawing of the parish church of 1806 through 12, and it will become the basis of our new parish church to be built beginning this year. Actually, I suppose when you think of San Juan Capistrano, you think of swallows. But really, here at the mission, we serve the needs of some 1,100 families in a very active parish, 204 years after its beginning.
The mission is now in its third century, and in spite of the changes going on around and inside it, something remains happily the same here.
'81 is the year of disabled persons. With that in mind, we'd like you to meet the DePrince family in Voorhees, New Jersey. And what a family it is.
Now, little one. Come on, do we go bye-byes? Oh, yes. Out, right, out. It's about the 5th time you've said that, poor little guy. You ready? Okay, let's see how you look. Oh, super! Wow, come on.
I've explained to the children that the most handicapping problems
Are you ready?
are problems of the mind or problems of the soul, where a person has made their own problems because they have been unable to cope with a difficulty in their life. And so many people dislike themselves in the world. And my kids are ahead because they do like themselves. They all have good self-images. They all think that they're great. In our case, we have 3 adopted children and 2 biological children, and it was obvious to me when our first child was very young that something wasn't quite right neurologically. And, he didn't suck right from birth, and he didn't have a grasp reflex. He also was sick constantly and seemed to have some type of a blood disorder.
Adam and Derek, the DePrince's biological children, have neurological difficulties. Robin, an adopted daughter, is mentally retarded. Paula and Michael Noah, also adopted, have blood disorders. Michael Noah is a hearing-impaired child and has vision problems which require careful monitoring. This means a constant round of visits to doctors and hospitals. It means time lost from school for the children, and today it is a checkup at the eye doctors for Adam, Robin, and Michael Noah. For the DePrinces, these inconveniences are a small price to pay for the support and love they find together as a family.
When Michael Noah came in to see me the first time, his ability to fixate and pay attention was notably depressed, and on this visit, both his mother and I were really surprised to find that he was much more aware of his environment, and he seems to have developed maybe a year in about 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I find that if you're friendly and warm to multiple handicapped children, their response is much greater than you would expect, and they actually don't behave that much different than a child who is physically normal.
Michael Noah he's just turned 2, but it's as though he was born 2 months ago when we got him. Because when he came to us, he just sat and stared at his hands. He was just crawling, and it was a very poor crawl.
and he really just sat on the floor or laid on the floor. And since then, he's learned to crawl really well. Has decided he no longer wants to crawl, and he's starting to walk. He looks at people. He has learned about 12 words. And for a deaf kid with a vision problem, he's really doing beautifully.
Robin, who feels good about herself and is proud of her achievements, who has a good self-image, is much better off than a child with 140 IQ who hates themselves to the point where they're suicidal. The children seem to be accepted, and occasionally they'll come up against a rebuff. And they just realize it's an individual case.
Many people might have the idea that children with disabilities, such as some of your children have, should not be promoted to the sacraments. I'm sure you have a different idea altogether about sacramental life.
What are we looking at as a human being? Are we looking at a body and a soul? I was taught that's what a human being is, that combination of body and soul. Do we have to qualify that and say they're only a human being if that body contains a brain that functions above a 95 on a Stanford by Nay? Because I think that anyone who's a combination of body and soul is a human being, and therefore they should be entitled to the sacraments. Even now, Robin, who is only mildly to moderately retarded, I feel that someday Robin probably could marry. I would not like to see Robin have children because I don't think she'd be able to cope with it. It takes an awful lot to hold a marriage together. But I think if she met someone else who were retarded or even not retarded, who fell in love with her, there would be no reason why she shouldn't enter into the sacrament of matrimony.
How you doing, guys? How you doing? Whoa, 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 whoa.
Without the children, I say my life would be extremely boring. I guess I've gotten used to a lot of children, which keeps it really lively. Have to become a little bit of a child yourself. The fact that they're handicapped in relation to myself and how much I have to, what kind of an effort I have to put forth, say after a busy day at work, I think is pretty minimal. I don't think of them as handicapped or with problems. Now, as far as the medical problems, most of that is taken care of by Elaine during the day. She takes them to the doctors and hospitals and this sort of thing. As far as life after the doctor's office, I really don't see any difference. We believe that whatever they want to ultimately do is fine. I want to see the best for each one of them, whatever that may be.
What shall I say to show the way? What games to play with you? The world turns quickly now and changes every mile. What shall I say to show the way? Tomorrow, child, I can't tell you what your life will be. Time will show you roads that I can't see. And if they carry you away from me, then go with love. Whatever troubles you may wander through, whatever wonders you may someday do, take my lullaby along with you and go with love tomorrow, child.
The Princes truly illustrate for us the love and interdependence we all need and can find in God's family. By the way, Elaine tells me things are going so well now that she'll be able to go back to school and obtain her master's degree in special education. One of our stories next week will be a follow-up of sorts. Those of you who saw the very first episode of Reel to Reel will recall the piece about how some Catholics in Texas are working to help their poor neighbors across the border in Mexico. Next week, we'll return to the area and see another phase of that work. This time, the setting is the city dump in Juarez, a place that was, believe it or not, home to some of the destitute. Through the efforts of the Texans and the self-determination of their Mexican neighbors, Many of the poor have found homes and jobs elsewhere. We'll also take a look at what the Diocese of Trenton is doing to help people affected by divorce and the breakup of the family. Though separation and divorce are unfortunately becoming more and more commonplace in our society, there is still much to be learned about both the long and short-term results of these trying situations.
If you have any comments or suggestions, please write to us. Reel to Reel, 222 North 17th Street, Philadelphia 19103. And thanks for watching.
Have a good week, and God bless you.